Hello there, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about something that's tied to the video I just made with the Sword and Pity, and it's tied to Shore and some of the other videos I'm doing right now. It's to discuss the representation of Nazis in film, you know. Because I think it's something that's kind of important to look at because it's usually a caricature and it's usually not that interesting. Because people are scared of the subject. Because they don't want to see, they don't want to be like sympathetic to mass murder and psychopaths, and they don't want to be the taint of you're sympathetic towards these psychos. I mean, if you look at Germany just now, Germany is still nervous about the Nazis, about the past. It's in a lot of their actions just now because they're still atoning for what they did. And you know, and you can't blame them because the more you find out about the Holocaust, what happened in World War II and the details and the build up through the 30s, there's a hell of a lot to atone for. I mean, every other society has their things too they have to atone for, but this is still within living memory and it's still a open wound for Germany, and it's obviously something they're not going to go over anytime soon, and it's just a horrific past. But within cinema, the Nazis are the go-to villains in the movies. The Nazis, you want to say anything, any time from like the 30s on till the late 40s, make a Nazi. Easy villain. I mean, the stormtroopers in Star Wars are basically Nazis. You know, they've been called stormtroopers like the Nazi stormtroopers. So they've influenced things like that. I mean, Indiana Jones films had Nazis for 2 of the 4 movies as the villains, but they were kind of comic booky. And they were based on the representation of Nazis in the 40s films, like Casablanca or all those films that dealt with the Germans. Raiders and the Indiana Jones movies take the view of the Germans from that, from what they would know at the time about the Germans, basically, that they were psychopaths, they were villains, they were anti-Semitic. But those films are never encumbered by the concentration camps because their characters wouldn't know about that, most likely. So they don't ever, and these films take place before the war, before the concentration camps actually happened. It was just like, these were problematic villains, but they hadn't done, and at that period of these films, they hadn't done what they would be infamous for. So that's kind of a clear taking how to deal with Nazis is like, you can do the comic book thing, or you can base it on the films made when people didn't know about the Nazis. That's the kind of default. Sorry about coughing, I have a cold. That's the default for the comic booky kind of movies. When you see something like Hellboy had some Nazis as well, it was kind of comic booky, it wasn't anything deep. They also had Russian villains from the Rasputin thing, so things like that, they don't really, there's not really much depth to the villainy there. That's what it is. Then you get like representations after that where they're about people who knew the concentration camps. And that's when it gets a lot more guilt-ridden and weird, because then you have to face the horror of what they actually did. Yeah. Now you can face in documentaries. Documentaries are simple. You can just do the description of everything and explain what they did and why they did it, and you don't have to worry too much about being accused of being sympathetic, because you've shown the facts, you're not going to be sympathetic. So that's never a problem. In movies, there's more of a problem because because the neo-Nazis came up after the war and have continued throughout. This like a shameful little subsect of like skinheads and idiots who, for some reason, think this ideology is that there's something to identitarian white, you know, stuff. Just basically, they think there's something pure about it, and it's horrible and it's vicious and it's stupid, and it's something cinema's really attracted to. I mean, there's been quite a few. There's a Daniel Radcliffe one that just came out. There's every couple of years there seems to be something about these. I mean, Romper Stomper, Ryan Gosling did one, I think. There's a lot. It just keeps coming up as if people are just, it's an open wound, like, because there's still like these kind of far right, alt-right figures in America. There's always these little clusters of like racism around in most civilized countries that it's kind of shameful when everyone wants to kind of say, "Oh, I don't want to do that, that's horrible." But it's something that's still there. I mean, every other race has their version of like purity of their race is better. There's always nutcases. Whatever race you've got, there's always nutcases who think their race is better. I mean, the kind of people end up blowing up things and, you know, starting like terrorist cells and things. Every society has them. Because we're white, we kind of have this guilt-ridden thing about neo-Nazis and stuff, and it's like, ooh. So it becomes this kind of hate thing. You hate looking at it and you hate thinking about it, but they keep on making films about it. And from what everyone I've seen, it just feels like it's kind of a waste of time. They haven't really gotten it. They're just too scared to ever get into real details about why they think the way they do. So it becomes like a waste of, it's navel gazing, but it's not actually clear about what the actual reality is. It's a waste of time basically. Because if you're going to do it, you just do it. You just admit to that this is weird. I don't think these films admit that this is weird enough, really. I haven't seen the Radcliffe one, but most of the time you end up seeing these on TV and you end up watching like half of them and it's like, that's a waste of time because it's like they're too scared to actually really get into the psychology of it. It's like, it's not me, I'm the thing. And that's kind of boring. That's the kind of Western take on Nazis that's difficult. Then there's you've got the thing about the modern Nazi terrorist and like something like Some of All Fears, which is a ridiculous comic book that's completely insulting to reality. These people don't have power, they're jokes. Suggesting they have any power is insulting to the intelligence of your audience. It's stupid. Just don't do it. Just don't embarrass it in everybody. These people are not they do not have the backing to do anything that's really important to society. They can't really move society in any way towards their direction. The worst that happens is they get a shooter or a Timothy McVeigh type of figure who loses it and does weird shit, you know, blows stuff up. It's a minority of violent people with guns and explosives and that's it. But even then, no one will make a film that's actually serious about it. It's always like, yeah, type of thing. So it's really strange how, like, obviously people are attracted to exploring the subject, but they can't come to terms with it the same way Germany can't come to terms with the Nazis. It's just something that is obviously inherent within white society at a small level, this thing, but you don't want to prod it too much, and it's just like, you either go for it or don't go for it, or don't cover it, you know, don't pussyfoot around it. So that's what another representation of Nazis is, like the, you know, the kind of weak, liberal, expose movie that's actually kind of boring. Then you have the Nazi exploitation films from Europe in the 70s where they're fetishistic. you know the ones I'm talking about. You know, they're basically Nazi porn movies. And they're taking advantage of the perverness of the Nazis and they're preying into people's worst instincts and doing it for titillation's sake. You know, we all know those movies. They were they're pretty abhorrent, especially if you don't end up with the subject matter abhorrent. But again, they're part of human nature. They're the exploitation, they're the horrific underbelly of society, and it's the thing you think, I wish that hadn't existed, but it exists, and it's just a genre thing, and it's a fairly shameful thing. But again, every society has their shameful exploitation made by idiots who can make quick bucks off exploiting something horrific and adding sex to it. I mean, it's just human nature to exploit that kind of thing. It's just, that's the way it goes. And that was a 70s thing. It's not really done anymore because people realise it's tasteless. I mean, the 70s it had a lot of things. It was far enough away from the war so they could start covering it a bit more. But it was a lot of tastelessness. I mean, there was shows like Allo and stuff, and the BBC did, which is a comedy about the resistance that was just offensive to the French and just horrible. And it's like, how is this ever allowed in British TV? How did anyone not say this is a bad idea? So I mean, there's exploitation of that in the sex area, but there's also exploitation of the BBC doing something that's really bad taste, and because it's popular, they just keep doing it even though it's pretty horrific. And then there's the blockbuster mentality thing with the best example I would give is the X-Men movies, who when Bryan Singer before his recent fall seemed to have a thing about Nazis, even though he's Jewish. It seemed to be this weird Nazi thing with him. Is like, well, what was going on there? Because he did Up People, which is about Nazis. He did Valkyrie, which was about the Germans against the Nazis within World War II, which was the best of those films. And the X-Men kept on putting Nazi stuff in it. Like it started off in the in the concentration camps with Magneto, who turned out the villain, and it kept on coming back to that repeatedly throughout the films, that Magneto was a Jew, and he was traumatised by it. That's in the comic books, but the way it was done in these films was a bit. I mean, the first film started off in the concentration camps, and you saw him first get his powers, and I always thought it was a bit. It was done for shock effect, basically. What do you expect from a superhero film? Not this. And it was always a bit off. Especially since superhero films work on like Nietzschean ideology, like be more than human, which is what the Nazis were trying to do. And it's like putting an idea was perverted by the Nazis and then bring the concentration camps into it always feels like it's like you have to tread carefully here, and these films never treaded carefully, just chucked imagery of concentration camps at you every so often. Then in First Class, which was, it followed on from that idea, and it ended up showing you Magneto in the Nazi experimentation camps as they try and work out his powers. That was kind of felt a bit dodgy too, but it was moved on quickly enough. It was one of those things that I wish they hadn't done, but it didn't feel kind of used to at that point. It was still kind of this tasteless X-Men thing. It's just like, you really shouldn't be doing this. This is off. And then finally you get to the piece de resistance of bad X-Men Nazi obsession. Again, Bryan Singer directing again, which is an apocalypse where Magneto destroys Auschwitz using his powers, which is really tasteless. This is like, when I was watching the cinema, I was like, oh my god, you can't do this. Who didn't look at this and say, you can't do that? How did this get beyond a studio? How did the studio pay for this? This was like horrific. This is like a national monument to the inhumanity of our society, the failure of our society. And in this superhero film, they just destroy it. This godlike person destroys it because it's apocalypse that helps him destroy it. There's this Nietzschean god, and it's like, you're treading on so many bad ideas here, so many tasteless ideas. it's just shocking that a Jewish person would actually make this film and actually put that in there. It was like, this is almost the level of the 70s Nazi exploitation film for tastelessness. This is like really bad. And they're using all this CGI that makes everything look weightless and fake, and it's just a total affront to what happened in Germany and Poland. It was just awful. So there's that. I mean that seems to be the Hollywood version of Nazism now. This like special effects thing. You reference it every so often. There's no weight to it. I mean, the only time there was any weight to it was with Schindler's List. That's about it. That's the only time they've ever put any weight. And then after that, it just becomes just weightless. They're the baddies again. It's like, that's kind of tasteless. This is a evil that should actually not be exploited in this way. It's an evil that should be shown for what it was, and documentaries made and shown to people and let people understand what the actual horrors were. Making it an entertainment is, you have to be very careful about it. As I said before, like the Indiana Jones films did it right because they focused on, like, before the war, before all the concentration camps happened, they could just simply be Nazis and be villains. But as soon as you get into anything to do with the concentration camps, you have to tread really carefully. Or anytime you go into like white nationalism, you have to tread very carefully and be very intelligent. And modern cinema just doesn't know how to do that. They just don't have a clue. And now it's degenerated into such a point now that people call each other Nazis for disagreeing with them. Because they don't seem to understand what Nazis actually were, what they actually were about, what the evil of them actually was. So now you can say punch a Nazi thing, which is, they're not Nazis, they're just people you disagree with. And it just cheapens what actually happened for personal gain through ignorance. And it's pretty horrific. So, I mean, the state of like what happened in Germany in World War II has now been, there's no weight to it anymore. They've taken the pop culture and exploited it for the war movies, for like all these other movies that have no weight about the actual horrors of what they face. It's just a big nothing. And that's really sad how basically exploitive like film producers have taken one of the world's great horrors and turned it into things to sell people. You know, if you're not going to deal with Nazis properly, just don't deal with them. Preferably I'd like to see deal with them with real fear and really show how terrifying they actually are. Not this cheapening for just quick special effects, because that doesn't do anyone any good. It doesn't warn people for the future about the evil of like orthodoxy going mad. It doesn't help people understand how certain extremes can cause mass murder. It doesn't really train anybody for any survival skills. It just says don't worry about it. Which special effects can deal with this. It's nothing. This is weightless, and that's real exploitation. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope I didn't ramble on too much. I was just kind of annoyed after watching some documentaries about what actually happened. Well, this thing's always annoyed me, but it's annoyed me again just watching some of these documentaries again to see how the past has been like cheapened in drama. So I'll see you soon for another video. So bye.